I actually grew up in a house a couple blocks down the road, and everywhere you look, there are homes on fire. We're talking about dozens, if not scores, hundreds. I mean, it could be. There are tens of thousands of people that are displaced right now. Mika, to put this into perspective, pretty much every piece of infrastructure in town, both of the supermarkets, gas stations, doctors' offices, restaurants, the main public library in town, and houses on virtually every street that I have been down, including in the Huntington Palisades, right in the middle of town, have gone. I know there's a lot of policymakers that watch this broadcast every single day, especially back in Washington. The recovery from this is going to be one on the scale, imagine, of the big one from the earthquake.
That is MS Now senior political and national reporter Jacob Soboroff nearly 1 year ago on this program covering the Pacific Palisades wildfires that devastated the Los Angeles area and the town where he grew up. Jacob joins us now, out today with the new book, Firestorm, The Great Los Angeles Fires and America's New Age of Disaster. Jacob, it's great to see you. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Wow. You did a year ago, and the weeks and months that followed, did such a great job reporting on a story that was personal to you.
Thanks, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like? Most stories we don't have a personal connection to, although you feel the people you're covering. This was home for you.
Incomprehensible at the time. And I remember texting with you. I remember talking to all of you. I'd never heard from my colleagues in such a way on a story that was such a mix of the personal and professional. I was around the corner in that clip we just played when I was talking to you, Mika, from the house I grew up in, which had burned down during the fire. And how do you comprehend watching your childhood memories carbonize in real time? You don't, is the answer to the question. And that's why I set out to write this book. And what I ultimately have come to understand is what happened in L.A. was in some measure, and this is through talking to government officials that talked to me off the record. This isn't talking to firefighters, wildlife biologists, scientists. This was the fire of the future. And it's the fire of the future for so many reasons, not just climate change, but changes in the way we live. Our infrastructure is falling apart, but maybe perhaps most importantly, misinformation and disinformation making going through events like this worse. And that's the story I wanted to tell in Firestorm, in addition to this being a real love letter to L.A. and a real story about people as well.
So in the post-mortem, we heard about so many problems about getting water out of the hydrants, streets being too narrow, the fire trucks couldn't get up there, a laundry list of problems that led to this. But bigger picture now, researching, investigating for this book, how did this happen, and what does it tell us about these future fires?
I think that the answer is that there is not one proximate cause to any event like this. We know in the Palisades that an arsonist started a fire that held over and 7 days later became the Palisades fire in Altadena. Faulty electrical equipment in Eaton Canyon ignited and started the devastating fire there. 31 people died, 16,000 structures were destroyed. This is 3 times the size of Manhattan, the amount of land that burned in Los Angeles. But until we look at all of this together, how the Lahaina's happened, people running for their lives and jumping into the Pacific Ocean, the Camp Fire in Paradise, when you look at the hurricanes in North Carolina, these events are only getting worse. The climate change portion of this is not a mystery, but the stuff to me that was most fascinating was talking to Gavin Newsom at length for this book about the relationship between him and Elon Musk and Donald Trump, the misinformation that came out of the president-elect's transition at the time, saying we can just turn on a tap and send water flowing down from the Pacific Northwest to put out these fires. He wasted billions of gallons of water that did absolutely nothing for the people of Los Angeles. And until we can all come together, one of the people that I never expected to hear from in all of this was Katie Miller. Stephen Miller's wife, who asked me to go check on her in-laws' home, who lived in the Pacific Palisades area. And we were adversarial during family separation reporting. And to me, it was an opportunity to reach out, not across the aisle, but to somebody who I've had an adversarial relationship with as a journalist and say, there we can come together on issues like this. Yet within minutes, the misinformation and disinformation about the fires started again. And I think that's just as much a part of this story as everything else today.
So, Jacob, we're going to get to your talks with Gavin Newsom in just a moment, Governor Newsom. But give us an update, if you will, about how things are today in Los Angeles. What has the rebuilding been like?
It's going slow, is the truth. And I think that there are lots of questions to ask about affordability in California. It's one of Gavin Newsom's biggest vulnerabilities if he's going to run for president of the United States. 40% of the homes that have been sold in the wake of the fires have gone to corporations, not to locals. People are leaving because they cannot afford to come back. These lots are too expensive. The insurance premiums are getting higher. It's a very challenging environment.
Let's talk more about your exclusive interview with California Governor Gavin Newsom, in which you discuss the aftermath of the fires and that misinformation spreading online, in part by Elon Musk. The billionaire's behavior was the inspiration behind Newsom's social media strategy to hit back at the president and his supporters using their own strategies. Take a look.
In that moment with Elon and the lies that he was promoting, that he himself was caught having to confront because he challenged local firefighters about the water and the lies and the bullshit he was promoting. And they looked at him and they said, "Sir, you're absolutely wrong." And he cut off the feed.
You put it on social media right away.
We put it right away. And you know what? We've never changed our social media since. If people ask, boy, when was the moment that you started to shift your communication and how you're shaping narrative and attention? It was literally that moment where I realized we simply could not afford to do business the way we were.
Yeah. Fighting a bully at times, or you fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
Excuse the pun.
No, that's what he's been saying.
Is it still effective?
I think so. You'll read a scene in the book where he's sitting there in basically a makeshift emergency operations center and is watching Elon Musk on a live stream talking about the fact that he believes that there's no water because of a conspiracy theory. And Gavin Newsom pushes back in that very moment. Newsom went to Washington last week to try to get aid out of this White House, and he says that the administration refused to meet with him, and he said it's because of their disagreements over immigration policy. It's amazing how much politics is seeping in across the country into natural disasters. It's one of the things, it's obvious, but when I really dug into this, I saw it very clear-eyed.
I grew up with hurricanes sweeping across my home area. And it seems to me this was a horrible combination of just hurricane force winds.
Oh, yeah.
Spreading fire across a region 3 times as large as Manhattan. And I hear all these people saying, oh, the fire hydrants aren't working. Or, oh, this isn't working. Or that. Listen, I would like to see the strategy to stop hurricane force winds carrying fires.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
And so the question is this happening because we just built houses and had this urban sprawl going into areas that just can't sustain that, because we've had to come to terms with that in Florida. The insurance companies have stopped insuring a lot of homeowners because they said, enough, don't build your houses there.
And that's what's happening in California. We live in the wildland urban interface. These fires happened in the Santa Monica Mountains and the San Gabriel Mountains and the foothills. It is extraordinarily beautiful, but we all make the choices to live there. I've covered hurricanes in your neck of the woods, in your part of the country, from where you're from. And what I will tell you is I have never experienced, and people that read this book will see it minute by minute, what it's like to experience fire raining down on you as if it's rain or hail pelting you in a hurricane storm. And there will only be more of these fires. And that's part of the reason I want people to read it, is that there's no way we're going to be able to move forward unless we understand that there will be more of these. They will be worse yet to come. But through the inspirational stories of people like the firefighters that I met, Eric Mendoza, who laid on his stomach flat in the middle of the concrete road because it was so hot. It was the only way he could open his hose full bore and try to put out any home that he could. I think we're doomed to repeat it. It's the heroes in this that make me hopeful.
Oh, well, and also the personal experiences in this book. I mean, yours personally, and also you had family members still living there. You grew up there. Talk about the psychological experience of losing everything that you knew.
I think I needed this book more than any other project that I've ever done, because it was extremely hard for not just me, but everybody who lives in Los Angeles after this. And the people,
traumatic.
The house that my brother lived in burnt down. Like I said, the childhood home that I lived in is gone. But 31 people died. 16,000 structures were destroyed in the homeless capital of America. Instantly, thousands more people were without their houses. But you will read about Kate Hennigan, a JPL engineer, 200 to 300 JPL employees. Caltech lost their homes in the fire. You will read about Herb and Loida Wilson on McNally Avenue. This is the street that I interviewed Gavin Newsom on for Meet the Press after the fire, and I went back and met as many people as I could that lived on that street because, Mika, just as you say, this is about the personal as much as it is about the politics. To understand what this is really like in the lives of people who really go through it, too often we show up in these cities and places and bounce and never really get to go deep. And that's what this was for me.
The new book, Firestorm, The Great Los Angeles Fires in America's New Age of Disaster, is out today. MS Now senior political and national reporter Jacob Soboroff, thank you very much. Congratulations
Can't thank
on the
you
book.
enough. Thank you, guys. Thank you.